Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the reassembly of the Remington R51. And we're gonna start with the trigger on the trigger shoe. This is gonna go here, like that. These little clips go up towards the top of the pistol. And then we're gonna put this tiny roll pin in that hole. So you can get it started without the trigger, without the trigger bar on there. Set the trigger bar in, tap it down. Just using the nylon side of my hammer. It's a roll pin into plastic, so it's not gonna be that much force required. And that's that, just like that. Now we're gonna set the trigger spring, this guy here, onto the trigger in this orientation. That. And then we're gonna rotate it out like that and feed it into the gun. Now we're gonna line up that hole and put the trigger pin in. It's gonna go from right to left on reassembly. Once you get to that point, you're going to use a larger diameter punch, like this one, to drive it in. If you can find, with your fingers, if you can find the notches, kind of rotate and push this pin in until you can find the notches where they came out of. That will significantly increase the life of your frame, because every time you put this in a different orientation, it makes the hole bigger. Get it to where it's close, like that, and then use your starter punch like this to just get it flush with the frame. Like that. That's how all the pins in this gun are gonna be. They're gonna go from, on reassembly, they're gonna go from the right to the left. Next thing we're gonna put back in is the magazine catch. Don't put the magazine catch back in before you put its mechanism back in. It'll just cause you grief. So you're gonna put this spring in like this. There's a notch where that top leg goes, and then this will sit on the ledge that's in the frame. I'm gonna start the pin like that so it's ready for me to push in at any time. The tab here is gonna need to be behind. There's a swell in the frame right there that the tab has to be behind. Make sure the trigger bar is up so you can get the leg under it. The way I get it back in, so the needle nose pliers, and I hold that top leg. So if you cant it to the side like this, the leg that sticks out has to go under the trigger and over the notch in the frame. Okay. So that's how that spring's gonna go in there. Just make sure before you set that pin to make sure that it's in an operating position so it can go all the way back and forth like that. And while you're doing that, you can push it all the way down, out of the way. The way I did this was punch. So I used my finger to pry that up and punch through the bottom of the magazine well to push it all the way out of the way. And then in this orientation, you can slide that guy in, let it go. Now the magazine works and we can set this pin. Now we're going to set the, I guess that's the ejector. You set the ejector in. What you're gonna do that is that hole needs to go on that pin. You set it in on this side and move it over. Like that. Then you're going to take this guy. It goes in this orientation. You're rotate it up, in, like that. And then I temporarily put the hammer pin back in its hole to hold that disconnector in place. So just put it back into the knurling, and that's good. The next thing we're going to want to do is put the Sear and the hammer block back in along with their springs. The best way to do this is get it through the disconnector like that. Set your finger on it so that it doesn't fall out. And we're going to do basically stages here where all of the top end of both of these springs are going to set on this shelf here. And the bottom hook of both springs are going to set on the back side of the Sear. Right there. And this one, if we stack it up like it's going to go into the gun, we're going to go in this orientation. So the bosses on either end are going to oppose each other, and this is up and that is up. The spring is going to go in this orientation, and this one, this orientation. So if you were to fold that spring up and that spring up, that's how they're going to go. So you can set this spring in place on the pin, something like that. Now this Sear can go into place. The Sear's position doesn't matter at this point as long as the hook of the spring is on the right place. And then if you pull the hammer pin out of the way, just set it in that position for the time being. Pull the pin out to about there. Now the hammer block and the hammer block pin have to go, or hammer block spring have to go in at the same time. They're gonna go in like this, that orientation. Okay, so I've got this all lined up so that I can set the hammer block and the spring in. Now I'm going to grab the hammer block and spring, set it in place, push the pin all the way through, just like that. Now I need to get this guy flipped around to the back side. So that's the final orientation of those two. So you have the black hammer stop with the silver spring and the leg there, the silver Sear and the red spring with the leg there, and both of those have to be on the back side of the trigger bar, like that. Now I'm gonna set the Sear pin, not the hammer pin. And we can actually take the hammer pin out now. We don't need it in there for any reason. That one's set, and we have the Sear and the hammer block in this orientation. So before we put the hammer in, we're going to put in the grip safety spring. It's going to go in this orientation right here. Basically, you have to put it in at a 90 degree and rotate it. It goes in right there. Like that. The other leg is right here. Now we're going to put the hammer back in. It's gonna go like this. Fish it up through. And the only pressure that you're gonna have to put on it is just to move the Sear out of the way. So you just push slightly forward. Now we need to put this guy back in. The mechanism that operates the, or that the grip safety operates on. So that spring goes in first. Going to set it in like that. Put a pick through to try and get that spring pushed down out of the way. Use a punch to push the spring down. Get a pick through there. Kind of gets us started. Now we can grab the pin, push it through the opposite direction. That. At this point, I put the grip back on one side, preferably the left side here. That'll hold that pin in from one side because that pin likes to fall out. Alright, now we need to get the other pin in. That's going to be fairly straightforward. There's a slot in here that needs to get lined up. Just like that. Send that one all the way through. Now, try and keep my thumb on those for the rest of the reassembly because we have to put some stuff in back here, and if you tip it that way, those pins will fall out. So the next thing going back on is your grip safety. This spring has to ride right on this ledge here. So I held that down. The other thing is the hammer strut has to go through that hole. So kind of got to line them both up like this. Slide the hammer strut into place. And then let go of the spring and slide all that in together. Of course, it's got to go straight in like that. Okay. Now we have to get the mainspring plunger, and the mainspring cap. They're all gonna go back into the gun like this. And you're probably gonna have to pull the trigger to let the hammer fall. Okay. Hammer forward. Grip, safety spring down, hammer strut up, hammer strut in the grip safety hole. Spring down. Okay. Now we can put mainspring pin back through. This is going to require a punch. Put that back in. Like that. Alright, now as quick as you can, put the grip back on so that those pins don't come out. So you don't have to undo all of that again. And don't forget your rubber washers. Grip screws back on. Cock the hammer. Push it pretty hard. Now all that's left on the frame is to put this spring back in. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to set this leg in this hole. And then kind of just push it down and in with your finger. And that's the frame. Now all we have left is firing pin block, or the breech block, not sure which one it is, breech block, the slot goes straight up and down, and again this pin goes in from the left, or from the right to the left, and it should go most of the way in without punch. Use an oversized punch like that. Make sure it's fully seated. Okay. And the extractor plunger, extractor buffer spring thing, from the bottom to the top on this one. Most of the way in, we can set it. Okay, now it's basically field stripped. So we're going to put the bushing, the spring in the bushing, spring in the slide. Slide that forward until it catches on its notch, like that. Barrel back in. It's got to catch a little bit further on its notch, like that. Slide the barrel back in at an angle. Pull the bushing forward. Let it all down together, like that. You got to pull all that forward so that the breech block can fit in. You have to line up the barrel with the hole in the front of the gun, like that. You can just put it all the way forward to where you can get it with your fingers on the stipple, or on the knurling. Stick fingers on the knurling like that. Set your breech block in like that. Slide all of that back onto the gun. Hold on it. You can let it go. And now all we have to do is slide the slide back. That. Set this in. That is a reassembled Remington R51. My name is Eric from the McCluskey Arms Company. Thank you for watching.